there's a lot to be learned from focusing more on the psychological side.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders podcast.
Welcome to Two Traders. It's Walter here, and hello, Darren. You're on the line and you're ready to go.
Hi, Walter. We've not spoke for a long time, have we?
Yeah, but you know, we still show up twice a week, Darren. It's the magic of the internet. so it's all good. So yeah. So we were talking about different ideas for topics, and one of the ones that I thought would be interesting is this idea of odds and likelihood. So I think a really important thing for traders, especially, I believe you have to think this way. But let me just give you the question. So the question is something like this: we know that the odds of dying from a shark attack are 1 in 3.7 million, and the odds of dying in a car accident are 1 in 84. So why is this important for the trader? Why do I even bring this up? What does this have to do with trading?
Well, I think what you're kind of angling at here is how our perception of what's important is usually way off the mark with the facts of what's important. I'm guessing that's kind of what you're angling at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the terms that they use is availability heuristic, which is basically things are reported, and what makes the news is the 5 guys in Australia, the 5 swimmers in Australia this year that were attacked by sharks, right? And what doesn't make the news are the, I don't know, in Australia it might be 500 people die in a car accident every year. I don't know, maybe more, maybe less. But the point is, the car accident thing, even though that's really the most dangerous thing in your house is probably your car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, and yet we're so worried about shark attacks. I found it interesting, actually. I learned this the other day at I take my kids to the aquarium, and one of the things that we had a really good, they have these people that take you on tours, and what he explained to us was that before the movie Jaws, and I didn't know this, before the movie Jaws, when a swimmer would run into a shark, they would call it a shark incident. And then after Jaws, every single time that something would happen with a shark, it was a shark attack. No matter what happened, it had become a shark attack, which is so funny. I mean, it's really funny, but it's true. A shark, there was the big one that made the news in Australia, and I think worldwide, there was a professional surfer in South Africa, and basically the shark was swimming by, and he got his tooth caught in the surfer's leg rope, and that was a shark attack, right? Because there was a shark involved. It's kind of interesting. So, I think you're right. I think what I'm trying to get out here, this in a roundabout way, is why is it that we think some things are more likely to happen than others, or other things that are actually more important and more likely to affect us we don't even think about. And I think there's a lesson in there for the trader.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, people are always banging on about how important psychology is, and we kind of find that quite hard to take on. We think that we're kind of really just look at the numbers and look at the facts, but when you do even just some general study of psychology, you realize that psychology really is 90% of it, because like you say, we know the facts that traveling in cars is dangerous, but it's not the facts about that risk that are important to us, it's how we feel about that risk. And to us, cars are kind of convenient, they're luxurious, they're even sort of viewed as being kind of sexy, really, and they're pleasure givers, they're things that we love, and people even name their cars. And my girlfriend always used to name her car, and she was deeply upset when we had to get rid of it and get a new car, like she was losing a pet or something. So, regardless of what the facts or the data say, we're going to play down that risk. The psychology of that risk is more important. The feeling that it gives us, it is more important than the facts. And, you see that all the time in trading. Yeah,
so there's a couple of different ways that you can look at this from a trading point of view. One would be the thing that's most important for the trader isn't necessarily accessible and isn't really thought about, right? And the other way to look at it is that there are some things in trading. These are the two themes that pop out for me. One is that your eyes on the wrong thing, right? You're looking at the wrong thing. It's not that important to look at that thing over there. You should be looking at this thing here. And the other one is that we can our estimates of the probability of things happening in trading are often wrong. And one thing that brought this home for me was I've been working with a group of traders over the last 2 months, and one of the traders has been doing a lot of work and a lot of back testing, and he presented this thing. I said, well, I said, really what you need to do here is you need to look at different exit strategies. So keep everything that you're doing on the entry side the same, and then just become more and more aggressive. And he was absolutely flabbergasted that it didn't matter whether he went for a 3R trade or a 5R trade. In other words, he would exit after he made 300% of his risk on the trade or 500% of his risk on the trade. The win rate stayed the same. And he never would have thought that. Now, the win rate dropped a lot when you went from 1R to 2R, right? So the win rate dropped quite a bit. But 3, 4, and 5R basically all had the same win rate. And I said, well, get some more data because we still would expect it to go down a little bit. You know what I mean? When you get down to 5R. But he was amazed. And it opened his eyes because he learned that if I can just deal with losing more often, I can make more money just by shooting for a further target, just by being more aggressive. And that's kind of a reminder here, this idea of, availability heuristic of thinking about shark attacks and worrying about shark attacks every time we're in the water, when really what we should be worrying about is the ride home from the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that? Like if you're thinking about the things that we know as humans, we focus in on the wrong things as traders. We focus in on, for example, we focus in on win rate, or we focus in on not missing out. So everyone's making money on Bitcoin. Boy, I gotta buy some Bitcoin. Or this win rate isn't good enough. I only have a 43% win rate on my trading system. I need to add a filter and get this up to 60% or whatever. We're always we've got our eyes on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah, I know. And the way I dealt with it was to just accept that my thinking is wrong. And Michael Mubassan's got a good book called Think Twice. So your natural gut instinct is most likely going to be wrong. So I just always think that way and then sort of kind of move on to the next thought, which tends to be the more rational one. So I just don't believe myself. So I try and fight against that. We're all kind of a bit, we all think we're better than we are, and we're smarter than we are, and that is good enough to get us through. And I just try and take the opposite stance to that. So if my gut instinct is telling me that 1-to-1 risk to reward is the best way to go, then I say, okay, well, the likelihood then is that it's probably more like 10-to-1. So I start from that point and work back. So that's the only way I've found to improve as a trader, is to take that view on everything.
So you basically are just checking, like, okay, I think that's probably wrong, and maybe I should look at it from 180 degree turnaround, like just change my view on this, or consider it.
Yeah, definitely, because most of these feelings are coming from the subconscious. They're not coming from the facts. It is rarely the facts. It's always these biases. It's these human emotions. It's how you feel that is most likely to drive you. You think that your back test is going to determine what you do, but it's not. And the glaringly obvious way to sort of bring this home is to look at what traders do, and we all make the same mistakes in general. The mistakes that are made the most often we all make. So it's not about you. There's something deeper in the subconscious that's going on there. It's not something that's unique to you. It's something that's built into human beings when they're making risky decisions. And you have to come at it from a different angle. So if you're just, going into forums and reading what everybody else is doing, the chances are you're being fed the wrong information, because we're all making these natural mistakes.
So let me ask you this. As a trader, being aware of the fact that your instincts are probably wrong and that you should be looking at it from a different point of view, you're always sort of second-guessing yourself. Do you think that works against you as a trader in terms of just taking trades. Like, in other words, here's another way to say it. If you train yourself to second guess yourself all the time, does that work against you as a trader? Like, in other words, this is like the American bubbling out in me, right? Like, we believe that you have to like believe in yourself and then you can do it, and that's a very I've realized now, that's a very American point of view and can be misinterpreted in other parts of the world. But regardless, I guess my question is, do you think that could possibly hurt, like in some aspects of trading? Not all, but some.
Well, yeah, possibly it could. But, really it's just about, it's not about stopping having those feelings. Okay. So, if your gut instinct is saying, I should close this trade early, it's not about stopping having that feeling. It's about putting some check in there and saying, okay, that's what my emotion is telling me. That's what I'm feeling. But what do the facts say? And if you can just break that thought-action connection for a few minutes, then you can consider the actual facts, and then you can say, well, hang on a minute. In my back test, this is what I did, and the probabilities look pretty good doing that. So really, despite the fact that I'm feeling this urge to act now and do something, different to what I planned, it's probably not the right course of action.
Yeah. And what I find helpful is to think, just use this phrase, what if I did this? You know what I mean? So you feel yourself going in one way, and you say, well, hang on, what if I did this? And for me, that's a useful phrase of kind of just, you want to kind of snap out of the mode that you just fall into naturally. And just consider other options. Yeah. Same thing when taking a trade. Like when I take a trade and I buy the euro right here, who's selling it? Who's looking at the same chart thinking this is a sell? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Another way of another good phrase is, what is the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And generally, if you're at 1-to-1 in a winning trade, the worst that can happen is that trade is a loser.
Yeah.
And, I think for a lot of people, that is the biggest fear, really. Although, again, that's happening subconsciously. They think that they're quite happy to accept some losses in return for their wins, and the probabilities of play out and everything will be fine. But the reality is, in the moment, that fear of losing is deep down, and it's probably really what's driving your decisions. It's not the rational data that's driving your decisions. It's that 90% subconscious deep inside that is really making the decisions for you.
I mean, that idea right there that you just said, that's been like the biggest thing for me this year, is just what you just said right there.
Yeah.
Working on the subconscious. Like, I think that's a really important area. I mean, how is it that so many people, you look at the data and it doesn't really matter, what market you're looking at. You look at the data and it all sort of says most people playing the trading game, they lose. Most people lose. So why is that? It's like we're built this way. We're built this way to make the same mistakes.
Yeah. And I think, if you knew that fact and then you started to, say, backtest systems and came up with your own systems and backtested them, and you never found any positive expectancy in any systems, then, that would go some way of being able to accept that, the reason that everybody loses is because it's almost impossible to find an edge in the market. But I think, as most of us who've been around a while know, coming up with a system to test that has positive expectancy is fairly easy, really. So there has to be something else going on. And, that's where your focus should be. Okay, what else is going on? Our gut instinct is to look at the strategy solely, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're reading my journal this week, Darren. It's really funny that you're saying these things. Yeah, this is exactly what I've been working on. Like I said, most of this year, really. Yeah. So, because if you think about it, exactly what you said. If you think about it, you can dig up strategies on the internet, and they're going to have a positive expectancy. And yet, good luck finding somebody, more than a handful of people that are actually using that to good effect. You know what I mean? So it's got to be something else. It's not difficult to manufacture or pull out of your ear a strategy that will make money. The difficult part is to actually execute it and do what the system says to do. That's the difficult thing. And that's what I find so fascinating about trading, is the fact that of those two pieces, the one that everyone focuses on is number one, which is system and finding an edge. When really, in the end, and like you say, if you're a listener and you've been trading for more than a year or so, you've probably worked this out, which is, it's me. it's what they call user error, right? In the software world. Like, what am I doing? How am I not making this work? It's something about me that really I need to look at here.
Yeah. And, again, finding out that bit of data that it is you is one thing, but then deep down the 90% is going to be saying it's not really me.
Exactly. That's not me. That other people do. Other people, not me. Yeah.
Yeah. Even when the facts are glaring you in the face that it is you, you're not going to feel that. It's unlikely that you're going to feel that. So I think if we go back to the odds of a shark attack, regardless of what the figures say, so what was it? It's 1 in 3.7 million. That figure is not like a law. It's not a fact. That's just where we're at the moment. And you're going to be thinking, well, I'm going to be unlucky this time because those odds aren't representative of this time that I'm going swimming. There's uncertainty in that number. It's not like algebra where x equals 3 or something. There's uncertainty with that, and there's the same problem applies in the market. You will do a back test and work out your probabilities, but that isn't a fact going forward. It's just there's uncertainty in those. You never really know the probabilities. You get an idea of what the probabilities were in the past, but that can change going forward. And you, again, deep down, that as well. And that, that's where the problem comes, because you lose faith in that data that you've got. Your fear takes over.
Exactly. And the odds do change. So like in the example of the shark attack, if I am going out for a swim in the Red Triangle or in South Africa, and I see a bunch of seals, floating around and stuff like that, and I've got to think that, boy, there's going to be some big sharks down there who are snacking on these seals, right? Yeah. That's why that. Whereas if I'm in Bora Bora, and I can see all these sharks, and they're just little lemon sharks or whatever. They're not even, they're well fed. There's plenty of fish around. I think, it's all right, So it's the same thing with trading. If I took a trade, let's say 5 minutes before the end of the week, and I had a really tight stop, what's going to happen? The spreads are going to widen. There might be a gap, over the weekend, and when the market fires up again next week, I might not only be stopped out, but I might have lost more than I had bargained on, because the market could gap over my stop loss level, that kind of thing. Whereas if I did the same thing in the middle of the week during the European session, then maybe the chances of the market pushing through beyond my stop would be maybe quite slim. So, it's the same thing, I guess. The odds do change. And, the person who never goes and swims in the ocean, their odds of dying from a shark attack are basically zero, aren't they? It's like the guy who never plays the lotto. He's never going to win. Even the people who play the lotto have a very, very small chance of winning, but at least they have a minuscule chance. So I think there's a book called Against the Gods. I don't know if I'll put that in the show notes, which is this idea of, people didn't really understand probabilities and how to define risk throughout history. It's kind of a history of risk. And I'll put that in the show notes for you guys. But that's kind of the game, isn't it? Like the first part of trading is identifying your edge and working out your numbers and figuring out what the odds are, what the probabilities are. And the second part of trading is teaching yourself and learning how to manage yourself so that you execute your trading system. That's really trading. That's really what it's all about. Finding an edge, defining the edge, and then executing it and working on yourself so that you can continue to execute it. But I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. I hear a lot of people talking about magic trading systems and how this system is better than the other system. And there aren't a whole lot of people talking about how you can trick yourself into executing your strategy.
Yeah, definitely. It's, what do you think about, with these risks and perception of the risk? So, most of us find sharks scary and we consider them high risk. But you find that people I saw a thing the other day about a guy who goes diving in South Africa, and he's like a cameraman or something. And he's obviously seen a lot of sharks. So now his perception of the risk with sharks has gone away completely, to the point where he's not really afraid of sharks. He knows he needs to be aware of them, but he goes and dives well as sharks every day, and he doesn't fear them anymore. Is this the way to deal with these issues with trading? You kind of have to experience going against the fear, if you like, and then you can progress.
Well, I think you can build. I think you can kind of inoculate yourself, so build up like a resistance, just like a good drug addict.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He just sort of build up a resistance. I think so if you first start trading with a really tiny amount, so that it's it almost doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's real money. But come on, and if you can just build up that way, I think what you just described though is exactly what we see with cars. I mean, when you first start driving, I remember when I first started driving, I used to tell people, I can't change the radio right now, I'm driving. And now if I could probably watch a DVD, text somebody, you know what I mean, pull a dummy out of the seat from the back seat. I can do all these things at once. Because why? Because I'm like that abalone diver or whatever, the cameraman in South Africa, where and we're all that way, aren't we? If you drive a lot, you get to the point where cars they don't look dangerous anymore. They don't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel scary when you're driving them, but when you first started driving, it was. Right. And I think you can do the same thing with trading. So I guess if, to answer your question, I would say, work yourself up to a way that you can build up a tolerance, just like a good drug addict, where you start out with, that little bit, and you get such a high from that trade. And then as you trade more and more, and you up the risk on each trade, then you get to a point where you're focusing on execution, and you're no longer, in the thrill of the trade, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you just kind of need to look at the mistakes that you're making and think a little bit deeper about why you're making those mistakes, and buy into this whole idea of psychology being important first. Really kind of buy into that for a bit. If you've spent a lot of time working on strategy and entries and where you put the stop loss and what indicators you use, just put that to one side for a minute. Just trade the system that you like, and something really simple, and just zoom in on your feelings, the decision making process, the psychology of it all, and really that's where you can make massive improvements in your trading. And it's difficult to do, because even when you've bought into this, even now I still find myself drawn to tinkering with entries and looking at this moving average instead of that moving average, and what if I traded this pattern. But if you do buy into this psychology as being important, you will get to the stage where you kind of look at these things, and then your memory clicks in where it's not really going to make any difference in the long run. And I think there's a lot to be learned from focusing more on the psychological side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it becomes pretty clear as you progress as a trader that it's really about it's about learning about yourself. That's where you make the big gains. Thanks, Darren. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Walter. Thank you.